Hi, third graders. Hi, friends. How was everyone? Hope you had a wonderful weekend. I know it was a little rainy out this time, but hopefully you were able to still have some fun, maybe even indoors. So I wanted to come on so we could continue our class read aloud, The War with Grandpa. And where we ended last week on Friday was Grandpa Jack had come in, and everyone was so excited to see him. And then our final chapter was when we were told about how his sister always was a mope, and how Grandpa was getting really mopey. And Peter walked in and saw his mom and dad. They were really concerned in the kitchen. They were just really sad because Grandpa really didn't have much like life to him anymore. And so, Peter was really worried about that. So we're on chapter 12 now, and it's titled A Little Help from My Friends. So here we go. "I don't care what you say," my friend Steve Mayer said. "I think it stinks." "Steve's right," Billy Altson said. "Your grandfather is a room robber, and so it isn't fair." "By the way," Steve said, "I'm invading Quebec." We were playing a game called Risk, which is what we always play when we're at Steve's house. Outside the living room window, it was raining like crazy. Steve is a Risk fanatic, or expert, or both. Billy and I can never beat him. But today, I was doing especially bad, maybe because I wasn't paying close attention. Steve and Billy have been my friends ever since we met in kindergarten. Steve is taller than me and thinner, and he wears horn-rimmed eyeglasses. Maybe because he reads so much. Billy's a little shorter than both of us, and he has crinkly red hair with thousands of freckles all over his face. When Billy was 6 years old, his dad hung up a chinning up bar in the doorway of his room. So whenever Billy would go in and out, he always would do chin-ups, just a few times. Billy can do 15 chin-ups. Well, I know that because I once bet him that he couldn't, and I lost a quarter. I can only do 3.5 chin-ups. Steve, he can hardly even do one. "Throw the dice!" Steve yelled. So I did. I lost another army, of course, and Steve had one more territory of mine now controlled. Steve looked at me and shook his head. "You're such a dummy," he said. "Look," I said, "he's my grandfather. What can I do?" "You put up a fight," Steve said. "You stick up for your rights." "I already have," I said. "I won't let nobody take my room," Billy said. He made a fist and he slammed it into his other palm. Pow! Right in the nose. "Right, Billy," Steve said, winking at me. We both know that Billy always talks tough like that, but this one time, he had to face up to a kid in school. His name was Phil Steinskraus. He was the chicken just like the rest of us. "I'm trapped, don't you see?" I said. "I can't let Grandpa know how mad I am at losing my room. And if I can't even talk about it, what can I do?" "Wishy-washy," Steve said. "What are you, a doormat?" "You can't let a room robber walk all over you," Billy said. Steve put down his fourth set of matched wrist cards and collected 10 more armies. On the board, he had already controlled half the world, which meant the game wasn't going to last too much longer. He looked at me funny, and then a slow grin started to spread all over his face. "Just got an idea," Steve said. "Yes, sirree, and it might work." I waited while the wheels were turning around in Steve's head. 1776, Steve said. Billy said, "Huh?" "The Yankees against the powerful British Army," Steve went on. "Here come the Redcoats, marching across the field in close formation. That's the way the British always fought. And what do the Minutemen do? They hid behind the trees and rocks, and they shoot behind their cover, and they keep on moving." "What does this have to do with Grandpa?" Billy asked. Steve sailed on. "You know that the British complained that the Minutemen didn't fight fair?" "Fair?" "Steve, I began. "The legend of Zorro," Steve went on. "A rich and powerful man who fought for the power of the king. He had to conceal his identity because to fight against the king meant certain types of death. So, what did he do? He hid his face behind a mask." "So like Batman and Robin?" Robin said. "Close," Steve said. So what am I supposed to do, I asked. Get a sword out and fight a duel with Grandpa? Guerrilla warfare, Steve said, almost to himself. When you're trapped and there's no other way, you fight from behind the rocks. You conceal your identity. You're crazy, I said. It's the only way, Steve said. Think about it. Brings us to chapter 13, A Light in the Attic. Guerrilla warfare. Hiding behind rocks and trees, wearing a mask. I was lying up in my bed and thinking about what Steve had said. It seemed pretty crazy to me, and yet it kind of made sense too. I was certainly trapped. My family had taken my room away and hadn't even given me a chance to fight back. Then I began to think about the people who fought in the Revolutionary days. Who were there fighting? The king? And the king was kind of like a father to them, or maybe even a grandfather? He certainly was the biggest big shot of 1776, that's for sure. And yet they fought for their rights. They took a chance and they stood their ground at Lexington and Concord and fired those shots, and you could hear them around the world. But you don't shoot at your grandfather. Well, not in my family anyway. It was hopeless. But then I got a funny thought, and still another one, and the whole idea of what I could do became very clear to me. Chapter 14, War is Declared. I scouted around when no one was looking, sneaking down in my dad's office in the basement. It was a mess. There were 3 lights in the ceiling, but only one of them worked. Dad had put down the floor himself, and some of the tiles were coming loose. There was a sink in the corner near the bathroom, but it didn't work and nobody knew how to fix it. Lucky for me, all I wanted to use was Dad's computer, and that was working. When you start a war, you have to send the enemy a note, or something like that, telling them what you want and why you want it. I had to let Grandpa know why I was about to go to war with him, and I really didn't want to sign my name to the note or even have it in my handwriting. Because if my parents got a hold of it, that would be the end of that war, and probably the end of me too. I stuck a piece of paper into the printer so it was ready for when I began to print. Here's what I typed out. Declaration of war. You have stolen something that belongs to me. You have taken my room and I want it back. This is a warning. You have 24 hours to give me back what is mine, or else war will begin. And then I signed it this way. The Secret Warrior. I thought that was pretty good. The note sounded hard and tough, like I really meant business. To tell the truth, though, I was so nervous, my hands were shaking. And then I thought that Grandpa would certainly be showing this to Mom and Dad, so then I did a P.S. note at the bottom. P.S. This war is between you and me. Do not tell my parents, or I'll never talk to you again. Well, I thought, if you're going to start a note like this for war, well, I think this is a good way. Now the question is, what do I do with it? I thought about that for a long time, but 10 minutes about. I wanted to put it someplace where Grandpa would find it when he was all alone. I sure didn't want anyone else to find it in the family or for them to see it. That meant I had to put it in Grandpa's room, my room, really, until he stole it. And then I had to sneak in there sometime when my mom wasn't coming up there to clean. So I waited until after dinner. All the time I had the note folded up and tucked into my pants pocket, which was practically the whole day. I was like this shivering little rabbit. Just feeling that piece of paper crinkled in my pocket made me nervous. I snuck upstairs when Grandpa sat down in front of the TV in the living room, which was where he almost spent every single night. I went into Grandpa's room and closed the door quietly behind me. Then I looked around, and on top of the dresser, Grandpa had a picture of Grandma in an old silver frame. Next to it was his hairbrush and comb. Then the door opened suddenly, and I almost jumped out of my skin. "Hi, Petey," Jenny said. "What are you doing?" "Nothing," I said really fast. My voice was so high and squeaky it kind of sounded funny in my ears. Jenny gave me a strange look. "Did I frighten you?" she asked. No, you didn't frighten me at all," I lied. "You look funny," she said. Then she shrugged. "You want to play casino? Mom and Dad are busy and Grandpa's too tired." That was just like Jenny. Here I was about to start a war and she wanted to play games. No, I don't want to play casino, I said, or any other stupid game. Why don't you just go downstairs and watch TV with Grandpa, or go read a book, or go practice ballet, or go do something instead of coming up here and bothering me? She looked at me for a long time. Weird. Totally weird. And then she walked out. If this is how war is, I thought, I wouldn't make a very good soldier. I took the folded up note from my pocket, unfolded it, and stuck it underneath Grandpa's bedspread on top of his pillow. He'd have to be blind not to see it. So he would surely read it tonight, and the war would begin between us. I felt nervous about it, but not too much. Whatever was going to happen, I was ready for. Then I went upstairs to my stinky room, threw a tennis ball against the wall for about 45 million times. All right, and that brings us to chapter 15, which we'll enjoy tomorrow. So have a great day, my friends. I've been thinking about you, and I'll see you tomorrow.